Welcome, everybody, to the Beyond Terrestrial Podcast, your home for the strange, the macabre, the conspiratorial, and all-around weird happenings. Recording from the Bell Witch's backyard, I'm your host, Mike Roop, alongside Lee Arrett. Today, we are talking simulation theory. Because this is our first podcast, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm Mike. I love Jack and Cokes and long walks on the beach. I entertain everything, even if I don't believe it. Especially the fact that the elite of the world are just merely a bunch of infant blood-drinking reptiles just waiting to fully ensnare the world in a pit of misery. Lee?
Hello, everybody, and as Mike said earlier, my name is Lee Arrett. I have a hankering for the weird, and it can only be filled by consistent research into strange things our world has to offer. Especially the interdimensional being known as Sasquatch and how his regular reality shifts will eventually break down space and time as we know it. Simulation theory is what we're covering today, Mike. Have we talked about what it actually is?
As far as I know now, I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination.
Yes, you are. You have that vest. I mean, cape.
Cape.
It says S.
Give it some goddamn respect. Of course it's a cape. Come on, dude. Come on. Vest? What am I?
I thought you were Mr. Rogers.
No. Well, no, obviously, because this is our first episode. For some reason, we decided
it's our first?
It's our first episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
And for some reason, we decided to take on the huge subject of the simulation theory, the simulation hypothesis.
I actually absolutely agree with that. I mean, earlier this week, we were like, did we really take on the worst theory possible?
Like, why did we do this?
Yes, exactly.
Couldn't we have talked about Bigfoot or ghosts?
We should have talked about Bigfoot.
But no, we have to actually back this up with some sort of scientific reference in some sort of way. But let me first say, we are not scientists. Simulation theory is the theory. Some folks call it simulation hypothesis. It is the idea that the universe and the world as we know it is a computer program.
So if we were to do an overview for this, it would be like, for example, if you were in the early 2000s and playing The Sims when it first came out. It's very similar to that thought process.
Exactly.
Except we are the Sims.
We're the Sims. Yeah. And there's someone out there that that is the player. You know?
Okay.
There's somebody out there with like some awesome Windows 98 computer.
I'm sure it is Windows 9. No, he sprung for the Windows 2000.
He went for 2000, the one that nobody had.
Like Windows ME.
Yeah. That's hilarious. But yeah, so let's get into it. What are we covering?
I think the big talking points about simulation hypothesis or theory that we're going to be talking about is somewhat about how there are examples of potential within our world, how it could potentially affect our everyday life, and what our ultimate thoughts are about simulation theory or our hypothesis ourselves on it.
Okay.
When we look at what simulation theory is, Elon Musk puts it the best way, and I heard him several times today because I've listened to the same YouTube videos about 100 times. Elon Musk says, when you look at where we were 40 years ago, and we had Pong, and it was two rectangles and a dot bouncing back and forth across the TV. And now we have simulated video games that are picture accurate, that are hard to distinguish from a picture and a real event, and a simulated event. It's only the only conclusion you can get to is within the next few years, we will be at a point where it would be possible to create a reality that is so realistic, a simulated reality that's so realistic that we would not be able to distinguish it from actual reality.
That is, I think, one of the first ways of approaching simulation theory that really kind of stuck out to me in my mind. When it comes to virtual reality, which I believe Elon Musk has talked about specifically. Not sure exactly, but the fact that if we think about virtual reality and the way that the way it is today and where it's come from, which has been leaps and bounds, the point of virtual reality is to be completely, fully immersed in a separate reality. So have you done virtual reality?
I have. I mean, I had a
you
virtual
played,
reality headset and been to the ones in the mall.
Yeah.
You are pretty
You're
immersed.
in there. You're in there. And and so it's very, very easy. I remember the first time that I played VR. I think it was Oculus. I can't remember exactly the first VR game that I played, but I think the first time that I got in, I mean, I played for forever. I don't even know how long it was. Like, I just played and played and played and played and played and played. And I came out of it, and I was like, the world is completely different to me. And, and I was like, this is going to change reality as we know it, is the way I felt at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And as I came out, I realized that everything around me is possibly simulated. Like, I don't want to try and hammer home the title or anything like that, but the fact that it felt at the time so incredibly real was just insane to me. Like I was literally existing in a different dimension, it felt like, because there was no concept of anything around me. I had
audio, visual input.
Everything was completely immersive, and I was locked in a different world. And so I came out, the world around me looked differently. I remember driving home that night. Mm-hmm. I remember driving home that night, and everything, like the shadows, looked really, really strange to me. When I reached my hand out, my hand looked really strange. Everything, for some reason, looked different to me. And so I was like, this is the real thing. This is the real deal, And but all this is to say that once technology gets to a point where virtual reality is indistinguishable from reality, the possibility of the universe being a simulation goes up exponentially. You know what I mean? Like, obviously it's not at that point now. We know that we're in a video game where we know that we're in some sort of simulated reality. We can see that the pixels aren't perfect, but as technology keeps going, like, we're not going to be able to tell at some point. Mm-hmm. And at that point, who's to say that we're not living in one of those simulated programs?
Oh, absolutely. There's another distinction that I like to make personally between whether or not we're talking about us actually living in a Matrix style where you're living in a program, but you're actually a living being. This theory revolves around the fact that we're not actually living beings. But if we can create something that is so realistic that us as what we believe to be living beings are not able to distinguish between that and what reality is, what's to say the NPCs or the non-playable characters in that reality, what's to say that they aren't experiencing what we are experiencing in our supposed reality?
That's huge. Like, I think that's completely possible, and I think that kind of comes to the root of this entire specific channel of simulation theory we're talking about, as far as virtual reality and getting inside of a game, possibly, or something like that. a reality inside of virtual reality is merely it's constrained to the confines of that program, right? So anything inside of it, if you were to take any sort of character in any sort of video game, that character doesn't know the difference between its reality, say if it was sentient in some sort of way, if it had some sort of bits and lines and code that gave it some sort of individual thought process, which is everything that we're doing with AI now.
And that's exactly what I'm thinking about, though.
Yeah. That's what we're kind of getting to with AI. If this character in this video game had some sort of free will, free thought process, its reality that it lives in, like Tron, basically, is an actual construct of reality to it.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm speaking of.
You know what I mean?
One thing
and so it's completely possible. Like, I'm totally agreeing with you. Like, it's completely possible at that point. And then does that, because of the mathematics that surround that, and I'll get into this a little bit later with consciousness, because of the mathematics that surround that, does that create some sort of artificial consciousness? And does that in turn create, something that can think freely? And is it possible that we're living as something like that? Absolutely.
Imagine that you're a sim and you're part of somebody else's world.
Yeah.
But you have no idea that you're part of somebody else's world because you are literally...
You don't know any different.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
That is what we are specifically speaking about. One thing that I've always heard, and it to me it's really funny, but maybe it's not, and I'm not trying to offend anybody with this statement, but I've heard people say, why would God create a universe and then let bad things happen to them?
Right.
Well, why in 2000, when I was like 13 playing Sims, would I create a sim and give them a whole world to live around and then lock one in the basement until it died of hunger?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or create like some sort of disaster that happened, or start fires, or like do all these things that because you can,
because we can, And if you think of it that way, that there is potentially some higher intelligence that created the program that we're living within, they're doing things because they can.
This is something super interesting that you bring up at this point, because I think that simulation theory in a big way, and I actually had a conversation with a coworker about this, and he is a very, very active Christian. Like he's very, very into the church, and he does all sorts of programs and stuff. That's strange. Programs.
Yeah.
Anyways,
like they're programming you.
but he does all sorts of functions and stuff with the church and everything. So I kind of brought up this to him, and we started kind of going back and forth, and he automatically kind of came at me with the attitude of like, you're trying to disprove God in some sort of way. And that was not my intent. That's not my intent. Like, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe in the spiritual realm. And so, but I'm not a religious person. I think organized religion was meant for stupid people. And I'm not saying that people who are involved with organized religion are stupid in any sort of way or anything like that. But I think
said in their mission statement where they're hurting their flock.
Right.
Fathers are taking care of their flock.
It's pretty demeaning.
It's pretty demeaning.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not religion in general is a good idea, it's a way to keep people from doing negative things that would potentially cause issues overall.
Exactly. It's not like it's all bad in any sort of way. Like, I feel like the worst of, I think that there's levels to it. There's levels to it. There's the person who goes to church in order to connect with their divine, their divine,
Entity.
inspiration, whatever religion that may be. But also there's the people that only go because they feel they have to, in order to fit in, or in order to socialize with people and stuff like that. And like, if I'm God and I'm looking down, I'm like, you're just a bunch of idiots. That's not what this is for one. That's not what the church is for,
Mm-mm.
But outside all that, I don't want to get into a religious thing, but I started talking with with my coworker, and he automatically thought that maybe that I was coming at it from a way of like trying to disprove religion in some sort of way. And I'm like, listen, man, like that's not at all what I'm trying to do. And if anything, this might bridge the gap
between science and religion.
Because
absolutely, that's where I'm at with it.
This is a way to possibly say, on a scientific level or on a mathematical level, things like maybe reincarnation, but resurrection, eternal life. These are all possible in something like simulation theory, because all it is the program. It's codes. What if you have to reboot the code? You're resurrected.
Absolutely.
In
eternal life.
But that's very, very scary for most traditional religious people to think about, because it goes against, exactly what people might think of. And it's like, that's what's really hard about, trying to speak with people about stuff like this is like I'm not trying to bring down religion. I'm not trying to disprove spirituality. I'm not trying to do anything like that. But, it's like, this could be something that even makes sense. Not even saying this is actually happening, because I don't know. I don't know that simulation theory is exactly what, it's not the answer to everything, but, it makes sense in a lot of ways. I mean, think about the perfect construct of the universe in the world. The only reason that the universe and everything around us came into existence is because of some sort of tiny error. If we want to go back to the Big Bang, we're going to get scientific about things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that the universe came to be is because of tiny little errors, is the way we see it now.
Absolutely.
Tiny little things that created a universe that isn't made up of only photons, and it created life,
Mm-hmm.
And
everything is by accident,
right?
According to current science,
right. Which is always seemed crazy to me. That's always seemed crazy to me, which is why I don't automatically, I don't automatically write off some sort of higher power or some sort of higher intelligence of some kind, because that seems too perfect to me. You know what I mean? Like, the most tiny little error caused this universe and everything we see around us. If not, we would just be a perfectly magnetized, state of something out there. I don't know. We'd just be a bunch of
I think before the
out in the
Big
world.
Bang, we were nothing. There was nothing before the Big Bang until the Big Bang occurred. And that goes into, have you ever booted up a computer?
Right.
We're not trying to negate religion. In fact, as Mike put it, if we're trying to do anything, we're thinking this actually bridges that gap. This creates a way for science and religion
to coincide
and get along.
Yeah.
Whereas current science basically says, no, everything religious, that can't be true.
What is a more perfect entity than something with simulation theory of a programmer?
Absolutely.
That is a perfect higher being. Someone who specifically created the universe that you see around you.
Mm-hmm.
That
and
is
changes
exactly
the
what
universe
God
as he sees
is.
fit.
I wrote a song called Our Ancient Programmer that I'm not going to plug any of that stuff, but like, I wrote a song, it doesn't have any lyrics or anything like that, but it's called Our Ancient Programmer, and it's basically God, God is our ancient programmer, if you think about it in some sort of, in that capacity, because literally, if God had an image, of what he wanted the universe and mankind to be, he just put it into place. He just wrote the code, if you want to say it that way. And everything became, what it is today because of that. He wrote maybe like a basic fundamental algorithms or basic fundamental properties.
Mm-hmm.
And emerging from that became reality as we see it today.
Mm-hmm. So it absolutely does bridge that potential gap that there is. When you look at what the potential is for our exponential growth of technology as it is, if we're saying that we will eventually get to that point, who's to say it already hasn't happened?
Right, exactly.
And if it already has happened, doesn't it make, at least in my eyes, once again, I'm not a scientist and I'm also not a priest. I don't know everything, but doesn't it make more sense that there is a higher power, but that higher power is still bound by science? The best way that I can put it is actually from Iron Man, or from Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man in one of the movies in the Marvel Universe, where he says, magic is just science that I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
What is religion? It's based around what is seemingly magic.
Right.
What if that's just science that we haven't figured out yet?
Right, yeah, and that's kind of what science is just trying to explain something, the unexplainable. And religion and spirituality is currently the unexplainable.
Absolutely.
So I think all scientists would love to find a definitive reason, definitive existence of God, or some sort of deity, or some sort of creator of some kind. They can't right now, they can't. And
unfortunately, if we are living in a simulation, they may never be able to find out definitively that we're living in a simulation.
Right.
Because our programming won't let us see it.
Right, exactly. We have the bounds. We have the bounds, which is we see as our universe, and we're too stupid to realize that our universe is probably finite in some sort of way. We can't see those boundaries, so we automatically think it's infinite, but I think it might be finite in some sort of way. It might be finite. I don't know exactly to what extent that is, and I'm not going to try and explain that. But it's interesting that this is a divisive topic among religious people. But I think it's more along the lines of it being like its own religion, like to where like one religion thinks that the other religion is wrong, along those lines,
So let's move away from the religion aspect. One thing that I thought about when I was doing all of my research, and really starting the early portions of this, is what if, so our podcast is about different weird things. Our podcast is about aliens, Bigfoot, Mothman, all of this stuff.
Right.
What if the simulation theory is literally a bridge between all of those different things?
Yeah, that's super interesting, because I think through simulation theory, you could really explain multiple dimensions and things like that a lot of people bring up when it comes to the paranormal and things like that. They think about it in possibly multiple dimensions, the paranormal dimension, for example, or, where ghosts may live or whatever the case may be. Multiple dimensions and parallel dimensions and things like this make perfect sense in simulation theory as well.
No, they absolutely do.
Because it's a simultaneously running program.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as
on
that.
the same system.
On the same system.
That can potentially cross wires occasionally.
Exactly. And nowadays we're really getting into quantum computing. Do you know much about quantum computing?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I'm not enough to know enough. But
it's super interesting. I think there's only a couple in the world as of right now, which is 2018, that are even fully functional. I don't even know if they are fully functional at this point.
Well, from what I understand is, as programmers, as we know it, we're not capable of building programs that can run on quantum computing.
Right. And I think that comes down to the basic binary code, like ones and zeros, because on a quantum level, if you think about it on a quantum level, the 1 or the 0 could be simultaneously a 1 or a 0.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? It's very strange. But that is my kind of understanding of it, and I might be wrong, so if I am, too bad.
Have we mentioned that we're not programmers either?
I'm not a programmer. I don't know exactly how that works, but essentially, if you think about quantum computing, to my understanding, on a simulation level, this is the only way to make a reality possible, for one, because you would need to have, in the case of evolution, you would need to have multiple ways and multiple paths of evolution.
That could be accidentally dropped in at different states.
So like a human could evolve differently from a giraffe.
I thought we were cousins.
We are humans and giraffes. Yeah, they're just in case you all didn't know, we evolved from giraffes. In order to make that possible, whatever computer or whatever system you're running on would need to have some sort of quantum computing capabilities to where it could do multiple computing in the same stream, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but
able to process multiple possibilities all at the same time and then select one of those possibilities.
Right. Well, in the process, in the quantum principle, two things can be happening simultaneously at the same time that are connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not a quantum, physicist, or, I don't know any of that stuff.
We're not scientists. Mike has a cape, but we're not scientists.
I have a cape. It has an S on it. But
I'm having
but
so
that,
much fun with
it's just
that.
it's just in the idea, if you think about it like this, with quantum entanglement, two things in separate places in space will react exactly the same, even over great distances, will react exactly the same with absolutely zero latency due to quantum entanglement. This has been measured. It happens. This is the way it is. Like, quantum physics is a thing. Two things can be simultaneously the same at once. You know?
And then if you talk in quantum computing and you say two different things can happen at the same time with quantum computing, does that mean that it is potential that it absolutely explains multiple dimensions? Because you can have two identical things or semi-identical things happening
at the same
time within this quantum computer that's thinking about all of these different things all at once and then processing it and separating those two streams of consciousness, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what if it is only mostly good at it? What if it fails occasionally?
You have your glitches in the matrix.
You have your glitches in the matrix. You have your Mandela effects. You have your Bigfoots that appear out of nowhere and then you can't find any bones for many, many years.
Yeah.
It just kind of gives an explanation. And I'm sorry to drop this like right on our very first episode, but that's exactly what
we're starting it off strong. We're starting off strong. This is what we're about. I think when it all comes down to it, I think what we're here to do is talk about things like this that are like big ideas.
Mm-hmm. Not only big ideas.
The first time me and you ever even hung out, you guys moved out here to Tennessee, and the first time we even hung out, we're like, hey, let's go about 20 miles north of us is
Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
Kelley, Kentucky,
Home of the Kelley Hopkinsville goblin case.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard about that, you will at some point in our near future.
You absolutely will. But it's a very famous alien contact story that has spawned the inspiration, I believe, behind Close Encounters of the Third Kind, as well as E.T.
Yes, it's part of the inspiration for both of those, especially the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Also, if you think about it, and obviously I don't have any confirmation on this, but think about Signs.
Yeah. It's exactly like the Signs story.
Everything about that particular movie and this particular incident is real close.
Yeah.
Real close.
It very much reminds me of Signs.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's just kind of what we do. We kind of just ask these type of questions. So get used to it.
We figured we talk about it as it is. Yeah. We might as well talk about it and record that talk and hope other people like it too.
Right. One thing that I wanted to bring up specifically, and I took this straight from the 2016 Isaac Asimov Memorial Debate of Is the Universe a Simulation? It included a panel of theoretical physicists, philosophers, cosmologists, and the great Neil deGrasse Tyson. James Gade, he's a theoretical physicist and a professor, I think, at the University of Maryland. But something really interesting, and this is a guy that doesn't necessarily believe in simulation theory. He's quoted to thinking that the possibility of us living in a simulation is only 1%. But he had found error correction codes in the fundamental equations of nature in his research in string theory.
Just to give an example to our listeners, an error correction code, if you didn't already know, is kind of like a patch. So, for example, you're playing your favorite video game, and at one point you're able to cheat and get all the monies. And now they drop down a patch, and you can't cheat and get all those monies anymore. That is kind of essentially what an error correction code is.
Right. It sends. I mean, there's multiple ways of they're doing it. We don't need to get into the details of how it happens, but essentially, it looks for errors in the transfer of data, and when it finds an error through an error, detection, it corrects it with an error correction. And there's multiple ways that it does it, but yes, it searches for. It searches for errors and it corrects it as it's necessary. And, he was completely blown away by this, he found essentially binary code in nature, which is incredible.
Well, it's interesting that he still believes that it's only a 1% that that simulation theory is realistic.
Right. My opinion on that is the fact that my opinion is that he's thinking to himself, but he had found where other places in nature where this might possibly be of use, and that is in the areas of evolution and genetics. So, for example, in evolution, as things are evolving, things go wrong. Nature kind of corrects itself in order to keep evolving in a way that's suitable for nature, and suitable for the species.
Well, it's just
as
like
well
survival
as with genetics.
of the fittest.
Exactly, it's survival of the fittest. It's however you want to say that. But that's so I think that's kind of where it comes from, and I think that maybe he doesn't want to seem like a kook too.
Well, and there's a huge pressure on the scientific community to not go off onto these fringe topics.
Right. This is a crazy topic, and it's relatively new, I would say, in the scientific world.
Yeah. When I heard about it, or when the earliest known thing that I heard about it was from a physicist, and I don't have the source because I'm not Mike. I didn't write it down. But it was released in about 2012 was when the first theory came out about it being a potential possibility. And since then, it's gained major popularity from different major names like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's
Elon
a big proponent
Musk.
for it. Yeah.
Both of these people are big proponents for it.
Or at least entertain the idea.
Or at least Elon Musk, honestly, like I don't believe that he doesn't believe.
I can't wait to talk about him and AI.
Yeah. He's an exciting topic. At the same time, a little bit crazy, but I like it.
That's what's great about him. You know what I mean?
That's what makes him great. That's why he's a great person. Every progressive person in the world is extreme for their time, is crazy for their time.
Back in the day, they used to call it eccentric.
Ooh, it's eccentric.
Oh, the old eccentric man up in the castle.
Yeah.
You know?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah. Eccentric. Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, the word eccentric is kind of a write-off. It's like saying,
you think so?
Oh, they might be a little bit crazy, but they are smart people, so you got to try to sift through their crazy.
Yeah, maybe. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
But that being said, the eccentric people are usually the ones that are finding the craziest things. Right. That are doing the craziest things.
Nikola Tesla?
Nikola Tesla.
Let's not even get started on that.
We might have
really
to do
eccentric.
We might have to do a podcast where one of us plays Nikola Tesla and one of us plays Thomas Edison, and we'll just box.
Yeah, we'll just have a boxing match. We'll just throw each other around the room, be like, yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna lose this. You're much larger than me, not in a bad way, but no, but it is huge. These great thinkers are always discounted because they're great thinkers. We are just now coming into a world where those great thinkers seem to be able to find ways to get an up on the next person. If you look at Elon Musk and his Tesla Industries, I mean, come on. If anybody is taking us into the future of what I see, the car, yes. Yeah. For vehicle technology, it's Elon Musk.
Yeah. When everything he's doing is absolutely amazing. You know, like with SpaceX and all that, which I think that flight was a total fake. Have you seen those pictures?
It probably was.
With the car? It's horrible. But other than that, he has a great idea, and he wants to make it work. And he has a team of people around him that can make it work. Mm-hmm. And I think that we need people like that in the world. And it's easy for him. Let's be honest. It's easy for him because he's filthy rich.
He has a lot of money?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I think so. He's got a few bucks.
Okay.
Anyways,
right. I believe you.
As far as I know, at least if he doesn't have a few bucks, then he knows some people who have some money. I don't know. But it's easy for him because, he can be like, I got this great idea. Traffic in LA is terrible. So I'm going to build a bunch of tunnels underneath the city and we're going to travel by tunnel.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, here's $3 billion, make it happen.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, earthquake. Yeah, the famous Joe Rogan podcast of his, he was talking where he smokes weed and everybody freaks out like, Jesus Christ, get over it. You know what I mean? It's even legal in California.
Yeah.
But he talks about the tunnels that he's wanting to build underneath Los Angeles, and everybody is worried about earthquakes, and he essentially created it, from the way I understood it, almost like snake skin in a way, to where everything is kind of like layered over top of itself, so it kind of moves. It kind of moves with the Earth a little bit.
So there's multiple layers. It's not just
layers.
one solid concrete thing.
So it's not just going to cave in on a bunch of people as they're traveling. That makes total sense.
As the system moves, it's going to... Yeah, the cars may want to park for a few minutes, but it'll make it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's amazing. I think we need more people like that. And
absolutely. We have digressed so far right now.
Yeah, that's fine. You know what I mean?
I've showed my fanboy for Elon Musk. It was weird.
We should all be fanboys. Fanboys? I don't know what fanboys are. Fanboys to Elon Musk. You know what I mean? He deserves it because he's the man. So,
okay. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
All right, so enough of all that. What are your personal thoughts on simulation theory? Do you think it's legitimate? Do you think it's possible? What exactly do you think about simulation theory?
I think that if simulation theory is not an accurate depiction of the world around us and actually what's going on, then it will either become a reality because of us in the next 100 years, and that's really given it a lot of time that I don't think is necessary. I believe simulation theory is something that is a fact and will be a fact. Whether or not we are in a simulation or not, I still don't know, but I do think it makes absolutely way more sense than magic underwear and being able to create life with a snap of a finger. If that's the case, I think it's more of a button click than a snap of a finger.
I agree with you on multiple points. I think when I think of technology, and I think of how technology has progressed, even since we've been alive, which is the smallest fraction of even technology itself. You know what I mean? Like, go back to, technology is kind of a relative term and all, but, go back to the Industrial Revolution and how far we've come from the Industrial Revolution and how many years that's been in relation to when the pyramids were built and when the first little bits of bacteria that created mankind. That's a pretty small amount, and how fast that's gone.
No, absolutely. When you talk in terms of evolution speaking,
it's exponentially speeding up.
Mm-hmm.
And if it keeps going at this rate, it's going to come to a level where it's going to absolutely take over the world. That's my biggest fear with artificial intelligence, and I didn't really get into that much. We'll save that for another episode. But it absolutely will take over the world at some point in time, and we will be living on the thread of artificial intelligence and technology. Now, at that point, it will be so further evolved. Technology is its own evolutionary path as well, to where
the problem is technology evolves faster than we do.
Exactly. And that's the big problem with AI. But I think it'll get to a point where we will be able to have technology where it will be indistinguishable from reality. We will have the computing capacity and the computing ability to create worlds and universes that are separate from our own. And once that happens, it is absolutely ridiculous to think that hasn't already happened before.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And to that point, I say it's completely possible, and it's something I think about on a daily basis. So that's it.
I concur.
Anyways, guys, this has been episode number 1 of the Beyond Terrestrial podcast. We are going to be recording more and more of these on all different subjects. We talked about simulation theory today. We're going to be talking about aliens. We're going to be talking about Bigfoot. We're going to be talking about ghosts. We're going to be talking about conspiracies. We're going to be talking about everything. If it's weird, we're going to talk about it. What you think, Lee?
Oh, I absolutely agree. We are going to talk about anything that we can. However, my one disagreement is his name's not Bigfoot. His name is Sasquatch.
You're right. I apologize. That is, Bigfoot is one guy. Sasquatch is the species.
And you cannot judge a species
by one individual. Bigfoot is one individual in the Sasquatch community, and let's keep that straight. Anyways, keep it real. We're out of here. Take care.
Thanks, guys.